Hey, history heroes. Welcome back to HistoryMan Podcast for Kids.
Are you ready for another awesome adventure through time?
Buckle up, because today we're diving into the life of a guy who was short in height, but had huge ambitions.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
This guy was the Emperor of France, a military genius.
And he conquered most of Europe.
We're talking epic battles, crazy romances.
And enough drama to fill a whole season of your favorite TV show.
So listeners, imagine this.
It's 1769.
And on a small island called Corsica,
Which is kind of like if Italy and France had a baby island.
a little firecracker named Napoleon is born.
Corsica had its own unique culture and a bit of a rebellious streak.
Kind of like that kid in class who always tries to bend the rules.
Napoleon inherited that independent spirit.
And let me tell you, it took him far.
Even as a kid, Napoleon was super determined to make something of himself.
He went to military school,
Which probably wasn't as fun as summer camp.
but it definitely taught him how to strategize and lead.
And get this?
There's a famous story about Napoleon leading a snowball fight at school.
And absolutely crushing the competition.
Now, some people say that story might be a little exaggerated.
Like saying you ate a whole pizza when you really only had 2 slices.
It's true that history can get a little embellished sometimes.
Like a game of telephone where the story changes a little bit each time it's told.
But what we do know for sure is that Napoleon was a whiz kid when it came to military tactics.
He was like a chess master, always thinking several moves ahead of his opponents.
And at the age of 24, he scored a major victory at the Siege of Toulon
Which was a super important battle.
that basically saved France from being invaded,
That's right. Napoleon was a young hotshot
proving that age is just a number when you've got brains, courage.
and a killer strategy.
So he was a war hero before he could even run a car.
But Napoleon wasn't just about battles and conquests.
He was also a pretty romantic guy.
Well, in his own way.
His love story with Josephine was full of passion, drama.
And even a little bit of scandal.
Josephine was older than Napoleon.
And she was already a well-known figure in French society.
Their relationship raised eyebrows,
And caused quite a stir.
kind of like when your favorite celebrity couple breaks up.
And everyone's talking about it.
But love conquers all, right?
Napoleon was head over heels for Josephine.
And they eventually got married.
Even though their families weren't exactly thrilled about it,
It was like a real-life Romeo and Juliet story.
but with less poison and more fancy hats.
And speaking of fancy hats,
Napoleon's ambition wasn't just limited to love and war.
he had his sights set on something even bigger.
Becoming the Emperor of France.
That's like going from being the captain of the soccer team to being the principal of the whole school.
Exactly.
Napoleon had a knack for leadership,
And in 1799, he staged a coup.
which is like a surprise takeover.
I became the first consul of France.
He basically said, okay, everyone listen up.
I'm in charge now.
I bet some people were surprised.
But Napoleon was like, don't worry, I've got this.
And you know what? He kind of did.
He brought stability to France after years of revolution and chaos.
It's like when your mom finally cleans up your messy room.
Everything is in order.
Well, Napoleon wasn't exactly cleaning up rooms.
But he was definitely putting things in order.
He reformed the legal system
Created a central bank.
and even established a system of public education.
So he was like a super organized teacher, making sure everything ran smoothly.
In a way, yes.
He was a firm believer in efficiency and centralizing power.
And you know what?
A lot of people loved him for it.
They were tired of the chaos and uncertainty.
And Napoleon promised to restore France to its former glory.
He was like a rock star politician promising the people a better future.
And to be fair, he delivered on some of those promises.
France became a powerhouse under his leadership.
But there was a catch.
Napoleon had a bit of a conquering streak,
He believed in spreading the ideas of the French Revolution.
like liberty and equality,
But he also believed in expanding French territory.
which, you know,
Not everyone was thrilled about.
yeah, imagine if your neighbor decided to expand their yard.
By taking over your swing set.
Not cool.
Exactly.
And so began Napoleon's epic journey of conquering Europe.
We're talking about massive armies, brilliant strategies.
And battles that would go down in history.
But we'll save those stories for another time.
Stay tuned, history detectives.
Because things are about to get really interesting.
We'll be back soon with more tales of Napoleon's adventures.
His triumphs, his heartbreaks,
And maybe even a few funny stories about his height.
or lack thereof. Welcome back, history fans.
Last time we left off with Napoleon on the verge of conquering Europe.
And let me tell you,
I bet it was like a real-life game of Risk.
with Napoleon moving his armies across the map,
Claiming territories left and right.
you got it. Napoleon's military campaigns were like something out of a history book.
Or maybe even a video game.
He was a master strategist,
Always thinking 10 steps ahead.
outmaneuvering his opponents.
And pulling off some seriously impressive victories.
Like what? Give us the highlights. Which battles were the most mind-blowing?
Oh, there are so many to choose from.
But one that really stands out is the Battle of Austerlitz.
Which took place in 1805.
Picture this. Napoleon's army is outnumbered.
By the combined forces of Austria and Russia.
It's a foggy morning.
And the enemy thinks they have the upper hand.
But Napoleon...
He's got a plan.
I knew it. He always has a plan.
What did he do?
He used the fog to his advantage.
Concealing his troops' movements.
And luring the enemy into a trap.
Then bam.
Napoleon's forces strike at just the right moment.
Crushing the enemy and securing a decisive victory.
It was a masterpiece of military strategy.
And it cemented Napoleon's reputation as one of the greatest military commanders of all time.
Wow.
It's like something out of a superhero movie.
Napoleon the underdog.
Using his wits and cunning to defeat a much larger force.
No wonder people were calling him a genius.
He certainly had a knack for pulling off the seemingly impossible.
But even geniuses make mistakes.
And Napoleon was no exception.
One of his biggest blunders was the invasion of Russia in 1812.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that one.
Didn't it involve a really harsh winter?
Like 1 million soldiers freezing their butts off?
That's putting it mildly. Napoleon marched his grand army, which was huge E,
We're talking over 600,000 soldiers.
all the way to Moscow.
Thinking he could force the Russians to surrender.
But the Russians, they're a tough bunch.
And they weren't giving up so easily.
They used a tactic called scorched earth,
Which basically means they burned everything in their path.
leaving Napoleon's army with no food or supplies.
That's brutal.
It's like playing a video game and your opponent keeps destroying all the power-ups before you can get to them.
Exactly.
And then, as winter set in,
Things went from bad to worse.
the temperature plummeted,
Supplies dwindled.
and Napoleon's army was decimated by the cold, hunger, and disease.
It was a disastrous retreat.
And it marked a turning point in Napoleon's fortunes.
So even the mighty Napoleon could be brought down by bad weather.
That's kind of a bummer.
It just goes to show that even the most brilliant strategists can't control everything.
Sometimes, nature has other plans.
But you know, even after this
And
setback...
Napoleon wasn't done yet.
Wait, seriously. After that whole frozen in Russia debacle,
This guy was persistent.
what happened next?
Remember how we talked about Napoleon being a bit of a romantic?
His love life was almost as dramatic as his military campaigns.
Ooh, dish the dirt. What happened with Josephine?
Did they live happily ever after?
Sadly, no.
Their relationship had its ups and downs.
And eventually Napoleon decided to divorce Josephine.
It wasn't an easy decision.
But he felt it was necessary for the good of France.
What do you mean? How could a divorce be good for France?
Napoleon desperately wanted an heir.
A son to inherit his throne and continue his dynasty.
But Josephine couldn't give him one.
So he made the difficult choice to marry Marie-Louise.
The daughter of the Austrian emperor.
Whoa, so it was like a political marriage.
A way to strengthen ties with another powerful country.
Talk about a power couple.
Exactly. It was a strategic move.
But also a personal sacrifice for Napoleon.
He genuinely cared for Josephine.
But he felt his duty to France came first.
Man, that's intense. It's like something out of a history book.
Or maybe even a soap opera.
But did it work? Did Napoleon finally get his heir?
He did.
Marie-Louise gave birth to a son, Napoleon II.
Who was given the title King of Rome.
It seemed like Napoleon's dreams were finally coming true.
He had an heir.
A vast empire.
And a legacy that would surely last for centuries.
But as we know, history is full of surprises.
And Napoleon's story was far from over.
Ooh, cliffhanger alert.
What happened next? Did Napoleon Jr. grow up to be just like his dad?
Did Napoleon conquer the whole world?
You need answers.
Patience, young historian. We'll uncover the rest of the story in the next part of our deep dive into Napoleon's incredible life.
Stay tuned, history heroes, because we're about to find out what happens when an emperor's ambition clashes with the forces of fate.
It's gonna be epic.
Okay, history heroes, are you ready for the final chapter in the epic saga of Napoleon Bonaparte?
We left off with Napoleon at the top of his game.
Having an heir, ruling a vast empire, he had it all.
But you know history has a way of shaking things up.
Right.
Remember how Napoleon married the Austrian princess to have an heir?
Yeah, like a total power move.
Well, that alliance with Austria wasn't as strong as Napoleon thought.
So Austria turned against him.
Pretty much. And remember all those countries Napoleon had conquered?
Yeah, they weren't exactly happy campers.
They were like, hey, Napoleon, we want our independence back.
So Napoleon had, like, a whole bunch of enemies.
Basically, and they were all teaming up against him, waiting for the right moment to strike back.
Like when you're playing tag and everyone's trying to get you.
Exactly.
So what happened?
Well, in 1813, everything came crashing down at the Battle of Leipzig.
Whoa, what happened there?
It was a huge battle, Napoleon against, well, pretty much everyone.
That's not fair.
It was like the Avengers assembling to take down a supervillain.
Whoa. So who won?
Napoleon's luck ran out, the other countries were just too strong, and Napoleon was defeated.
Oh man, that's rough.
Yeah, and he was forced to give up his throne and go into exile on the island of Elba.
Exile. What's that?
It's like being sent to your room, but your room's a whole island.
Oh, I get it. So was Napoleon stuck on that island forever?
Nope. He was Napoleon, remember? Always full of surprises.
What did you do?
He escaped from Elba, snuck back to France, and tried to get his throne back.
He was like, I'm back.
It's known as the 100 Days War.
Because it lasted for 100 days.
Pretty much, but unfortunately, Napoleon's luck had really run out.
Oh no, what happened?
He was defeated for good at the Battle of Waterloo.
Against who?
His old rival, the Duke of Wellington. This time there was no coming back.
So what happened to Napoleon?
He was sent to another island, this one even farther away, St. Helena.
Wow, that's harsh.
It was a tiny island in the middle of nowhere. Napoleon spent his remaining years there.
What did he do all day on that island?
Well, he wrote his memoirs, like a diary, but way more epic.
Because he had a lot of time to think about all his ventures.
Exactly. Napoleon's story reminds us that even the most powerful emperors can rise and fall.
It's like a real-life fairy tale, but with more battles and less magic.
So what do you think? History heroes. Was Napoleon a hero or a villain?
He was a little bit of both, wasn't he?
That's what makes history so interesting.
It's not always black and white.
There are so many shades of gray.
And sometimes even a little bit of gold, like Napoleon's super fancy hat.
So keep exploring history, keep asking questions.
And remember,
history is way more exciting than you think.
Until next time, History Heroes.